see you guys in the dark.
This happened back in October of 2006. At the time, I was just a 19-year-old kid, always on the lookout for adventure. One Friday night after wrapping up my shift at McDonald's, I had met up with some friends who suggested that we go check out this haunted location called White's Bridge. My one buddy, Brandon, said he had recently learned about it and began telling us the legends associated with the 100-year-old wood-covered bridge. We never were one to turn down a spooky experience. We all piled into my green Ford Taurus and headed out onto our journey. Brandon gave us directions, guiding me off the main road. Within minutes, we were on the dirt back roads, surrounded by woods and cornfields. Our only way of reference was a blinking cell tower off in the distance. We could tell that we were getting further away from the city, as our cell phones began slowly losing service. As we rode deeper and deeper into what legitimately felt like the absolute middle of nowhere, Brandon repeated the legend associated with the bridge. In the early 1900s, a local farmer discovered that his beloved wife had been cheating on him, and in a fit of rage, he had killed her and her lover after discovering them in the act. After committing the cold-blooded murder, the farmer left his home, wandered the dirt roads in a daze. He eventually came upon White's Bridge, where the realization of what he had done finally began to sink in, and decided he would rather die than face the consequences of his actions. He hoisted a rope over one of the bridge's rafters, and then hung himself. As far as I can tell now, the story is complete fiction, but we totally believed it at the time. After a long and bumpy ride, Brandon instructed me to turn right on an off-road that I couldn't have even noticed, had he not pointed it out, of course. I took the turn, and there before us was White's Bridge. It looked like something straight out of a horror film. An old, wood-covered bridge, aged by time, sitting alone above a river deep in the middle of nowhere. We parked the car on the side of the road and got out to explore. Immediately catching our eye was a scarecrow lying abandoned at the entrance of the bridge. My friend Mike, who was known as somewhat of a risk-taker, and a stupid one at that, picked up the scarecrow and lit it on fire. The hay body burst up into a ball of flames. Mike waved it around proudly next to the old dry wood bridge. Realizing the risk, I told him to throw the damn thing into the river and put it out. Thankfully, he did. After making sure there weren't any rogue embers that would ignite the bridge, Brandon suggested that we get back in the car and pull it into the bridge. He explained that the legend was that if you parked your car in the middle of the bridge, put it in neutral, and killed the engine, the spirit of the dead farmer would push the vehicle forward to get it off the bridge. Naturally, we had to try this. We piled back in and did exactly as he said. We parked halfway across the rickety old bridge and killed the engine. We sat in the pitch black, saying nothing, waiting for something, anything to happen. The only sounds were the creaking of the bridge, the river flowing beneath us, and footsteps. Suddenly, the back driver's side door opens, and a woman abruptly enters the back seat, cramming in next to my two friends back there. She looked to be in her late 20s, maybe her early 30s. Long, straight black hair, slim, and wearing a plaid shirt and blue jeans. It's been a while, but this is essentially how I remember the conversation going. "I saw your fire signal for me," she said. Wait, what?" I replied, totally freaked out and at a complete loss for words. "I'm so glad that you came. My boyfriend's car broke down the other way. I need a ride back there." My brain was doing its best to compute the situation. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" I asked. "What are you doing out here?" "I told you," she responded curtly. "My boyfriend's car broke down over there. Can you please give me a ride so that I don't have to walk all the way back?" She was pointing ahead towards a narrow road that forked off to the right on the other side of the bridge. My friend Mike, the scarecrow burner, and ever the gentleman, added, "I mean, if you need a place to stay, you're more than welcome to come crash at my place." I got plenty to drink, and I interrupted him. "No, lady, listen, I'm sorry. I don't know who you are, and you just got in my car, and this is all really weird. You could be an axe murderer for all I know, and I'm sorry, you have to get out." She glared at me in the rearview mirror. If looks could kill, I would have been done for. "But you signaled for me," she responded in an irritated tone. "We weren't signaling for you, got it? Now get out." She let an angry sigh and got out, walked back in the direction from which she came, and disappearing into the night. I started the engine right up and looked at my friends. They all had looks of disbelief on their face. Without saying a word, I put the car in drive and slowly rolled forward and off the bridge. We needed to turn around and go back across the bridge to get back to where we had come from, and the only way to do that was to pull into the side road that the woman had said her boyfriend's car had broken down on, and then reverse. As I pulled onto the side road, my headlights illuminated the 3 posted signs that I hadn't been able to see from the bridge: no trespassing, private property, and do not enter. Looking up the road, there was no sign of the woman. Wherever she went, it didn't appear that she went that way. I didn't want to stick around though, so I backed up and crossed the bridge again, and from there began the journey home. We didn't have much to say on the ride home. I think we were all equally stunned, except for Mike, who asked if he knew anyone that would be awake at this hour that he could score some weed from. I visited White's Bridge a couple other times after that, but nothing of note happened in my subsequent visits. Sadly, some delinquents burned down the old White's Bridge some years ago. It was rebuilt, but from what I hear, it's just the same as the original. I don't have any plans to go and check it out. This past summer for my graduation gift, my mom and grandmother took me to Alberta to go watch the Spruce Meadows Master Tournament. We flew out there, so we decided to use Uber to get to and from the show grounds. We don't have Uber where I'm from, but everyone says Uber drivers in the area were awesome. For the first 3 days, the drivers were great. They picked us up within 5 or so minutes and got us there in 15 minutes tops. The cars were clean and safe. On day 4, we called for an Uber 45 minutes before the time we wanted to be picked up at, which was 9:30 a.m. 10 a.m. rolls around, and we thought that we'd give it another 10 minutes before calling for a different driver. 10:05-ish, the original driver comes. In his profile, it said he was driving a 2017 Dodge Journey, but when he got there, it was definitely the right guy, but he was in this old run-down-looking beater. My first instinct was to go up to the driver window and ask him to roll it down. Before I could ask him his name, just to check and make sure, and ask him what happened to his car the app said that he would be driving, he almost shouted at me in a very angry tone. "Yes, I'm so-and-so. This is my sister's car. Mine's in the shop. Now get in, ladies. I have other riders waiting." I was shocked and scared already at this point. I looked at my mom and my grandmother. They said to just get in, so I did. I sat in the back with my grandma, and my mom sat in the front. We told him where we needed to go, and we were on our way. He had taken a different route that he claimed was quicker. On the highway in Calgary, 15 minutes is already pretty fast. 15 to 20 minutes had passed, and he had been chatting up my mom in a very flirtatious way the whole ride. He had taken us into the countryside that seemed to be forever away from where we were going. It was actually the opposite direction, and I asked him if he knew where he was going, and if we could get back onto the highway. He ignored me and kept on driving. Another 10 minutes passed. I was freaking the hell out. My mom was obviously quite uncomfortable as well, and we were still in the countryside. He pulls over on the side of the road. We just sat there for a solid 5 or 6 minutes. At this point, I was shaking and had to hold my grandmother's hand. The driver turned around to put his hand on my leg, but I quickly shifted away. Then he proceeded to look at all 3 of us and say that I'm sorry for the long ride, ladies. I know I've gone out of the way, but you're all just too beautiful for me to let you leave so soon. What the fuck, dude? I wanted to get out of the car. We all sat there in silence, and all I could think was, holy fuck, this guy is going to kill us. He made other creepy remarks towards me, commenting on how youthful and full of life I am. Some real serial killer stuff. After sitting there in shock for what felt like hours, my sweet, quiet grandmother screamed at him, telling him to turn around and get back on the highway. He finally pulled off the side of the road and continued on the country road. The whole way he kept looking back at me and making increasingly sexual marks. About an hour and a half later, we got to the grounds. I was extremely shaken up and almost in tears. I wished we had just called another Uber. I hope he doesn't do this to all of his female passengers. I will never be taking a ride share ever again. Uber driver from hell, you made me miss like 2 hours of the show. You scared me half to death. I gave you 0 stars. I've already called your superiors, and I really hope that you get fired for this." I was a stubborn and precautious teen. At age 15, I had a lot of friends, but I was a bit of a loner and enjoyed long walks in nature. Very long walks, sometimes 10+ miles. Since I couldn't drive yet, I would often just take off from my house and walk on back roads all day. This was before smartphones, as I was 100 pounds, a very tiny girl. My parents probably shouldn't have allowed it, but they had always been really relaxed in their parenting. But like I said, I was stubborn. I also had an unhealthy attitude of invulnerability and naivety. On these walks, people would often pull over and ask me if I needed a ride. The vast majority were just men. I never said yes. Usually I would respond politely with, "No thank you, I'm just on a walk," and they would leave me alone. Maybe after a "Are you sure?" and a concerned look at most. This happened hundreds of times without incident. However, there was this one time that I got a bit lost while walking. Not really lost, as I could easily backtrack the 5 or 6 miles home, but I had taken a wrong turn and wandered into a very rural area that I had not expected to be in. Whatever, it was a nice day, so I kept on walking. A guy in his early 30s, a bit of a junky car, passed by and asked if I needed a ride. As per usual, I politely declined, and he drove on. I got creepy vibes, but didn't think much about it. Then 10 minutes later, he pulled up behind me again. This was a rural road, and he must have driven in a very large loop to come up behind me again, miles out of the way. He slowly started driving alongside me while I walked, and asking personal questions, like my name, my age, where I lived. I didn't tell him the truth. He also repeatedly trying to get me into his car. I was very uncomfortable and just wanted him to go away, but was too afraid to be rude to him. However, I was not getting into his car. After an excruciating 5 minutes or so of this, another car came, and he was forced to drive off again. I was more annoyed than scared at this time. That good old invulnerable attitude. Then, like clockwork, 10 minutes later, to my horror, I see the car yet again. This time he doesn't drive alongside me, but parks in a pullout a few feet ahead of me. I don't know what came over me, but instead of panic, my brain just shut down, and I became entirely dissociative. I decided to just ignore him. I walked by the car calmly, continuing my walk. I tried not to look at him, but I stole a glance. He was pointing something at me. It was a gun. Before I had time to react, or even think, a motorcycle pulled up behind us and parked. My stalker seemed extremely panicked by this, and peeled out as quickly as possible. I must have looked freaked out, because the motorcyclist, who looked like a dad type, was concerned. He asked me if I was okay, and if I needed a ride. I gave my usual "no thank you, I'm on a walk." He just drove off. I was feeling pretty distrusting at that point, and aside from that, didn't want to climb onto a motorcycle with anyone, even though he had saved me from something potentially very bad. Looking back, I owe quite a lot to him. I'm not sure what compelled him to stop, but thank goodness that he did. I then ran the long distance home, looking over my shoulder the whole way. I never saw that man again. I didn't tell my parents because I was afraid of them restricting my freedom. I still took my long walks, but not again in that area, until a popular nature reserve was opened 3 years later. It was roughly 11:30 p.m. I was driving home from work. I got off the interstate exit, passed a few traffic lights, and found myself behind a very slow-moving vehicle. It was a one-way road, but I kept my distance and did not tail the driver in front of me. I was so close to home and listening to some good music that I wanted to finish, so I took my time and did not get aggravated. Most people I know would just cut over the double yellow lines, zoom past someone moving 10 miles per hour for no reason. But then all of a sudden, the vehicle pulled over into a parking lot off to the side. Finally, I thought to myself, I picked up speed and got closer to home. A quick glance in my rearview mirror. I saw the headlights of the previously pulled over vehicle getting closer and closer as I slowed down for a stop sign. I wasn't very far from home now. I took a few back roads, only to see that this vehicle was clearly following me. Made a few turns, and they followed right behind me. After some more quick maneuvers, the headlights disappeared. If I hadn't lost him, I wouldn't simply park my car home, for obvious reasons, of course. I proceed to park along a curb outside of my house. Just to give some imagery, my home is directly parallel to a side street. Stupid me, I didn't cut off my lights. I just sat in the car for a second thinking, what the hell did I do to piss off that guy? Then I saw bright lights at the beginning of the parallel side street. It was that same vehicle. They zoomed down the street. It was clear that they were searching for me. They never slowed down either. I thought that they were going to ram straight into the side of my car, and then their brakes came to a screeching halt. The front of their vehicle was inches away from my driver's side door. I looked over and was blinded by the headlight. I calculated what to do next. As I went to dial 911, the driver blasted their horn down for what seemed like an eternity. Fearing my girlfriend would think it's merely me holding my horn down to get her attention. I can be forgetful of my house keys at times. I quickly texted her, "Stay inside the house, please." I didn't mean to frighten her, but I was concerned for her safety. I know they wanted me to get out of my car, approach their window, and go crazy on them, but I knew that may have not ended well for me, nor would I have even opened up my door at that point. Unless I had climbed over and exited through the passenger side door. All of a sudden, they shut the engine off. The lights extinguished, and I looked over to the car. Their driver's side door was open. Instantly, I put my car in reverse. I must have backed up at least going 15 miles per hour. It was like something out of an action movie. I pulled a U-turn and drove and drove. I called my girlfriend, told her to call the police from the landline, lock all of our doors, and stay on the phone with me the entire time. I described what may or may not still be parked outside of the house. She told me she looked outside the window. There was no car to be seen. I circled around the block a few times and returned home. I was able to get the license plate, and I reported it. I've got to keep an eye out for that same car, but have not seen it since that night. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.